Hi, this is Principles of Management, and we are now talking about the origins of organizational theory. Included in this course are a series of lectures on the schools of management theory dating back to the classical era and proceeding through the current day. They trace the history of the development of management thought, and they're intended as a supplement to the text. For anyone interested in reading further on the topic, a great text is called Classics of Organizational Theory by Shafritz, Ott, and Yang, and it's the basis for much of these lecture notes. Today we're going to discuss some of the origins of management theory and continue through what is known as the classical school of management theory. Now, going back to the beginning, just some historical roots, anybody who's seen the Great Pyramids of Egypt, or pictures of them, or the pyramids of Mayans, or the ancient temples of Attahaya in Thailand, will understand that people have worked in some organized fashion since the dawn of civilization. It may, in fact, mark what civilization begins. That there were armies associated with ancient civilizations is evidence of hierarchical structures in management. Early and ancient references to management and organization are scarce, but a few are noteworthy. One, in the Bible, from Exodus chapter 18. It's the only reference in the Bible to management. There are a number of references to work and its purpose, but only one to management, and it's a passage where the father-in-law of Moses, Jethro, gives him advice on how to organize the flight from Egypt. And Xenophon, an author in ancient Greece who wrote about Socrates, recounts a discussion in which Socrates says that whoever is capable of organizing a chorus, or a family, or a city, would also have the skills to organize an army. We're not certain about that, but it's the first written assessment of management as a clear and distinct skill set. Naming a date for the actual beginning of the study of management would be difficult. Aristotle wrote about the importance of culture to management systems, and he also contributed to what would eventually become a foundation for the concept of sustainability by distinguishing between trading for profit and trading as households would trade with each other, that is, engaging people with whom you would expect to know someone for a lifetime. Ibn Taymiyyah outlined the principles of administration within the tenets of Islam. The Confucian work ethic consists of a belief in the value of hard work, loyalty to the organization, thrift, dedication, social harmony, a love of education and wisdom, and a concern for social propriety. And the writings of Sun Tzu over 2,000 years ago and Machiavelli around 500 years ago are perhaps the most famous and definitive works on the use of power in the context of war and politics. So, while it's interesting to study the wisdom of the ancients on these topics, the study of management science as we know it today begins with the classical school. Classical organizational theory was the first in a series of schools that have dominated management literature and continues to be the basis on which subsequent developments have been built. The school is rooted in the Industrial Revolution of the 1800s, but it's reached its apex of popularity in the beginning of the 20th century and into the 1930s. The school rests on several fundamental tenets. 1. Organizations exist to accomplish production-related and economic goals. 2. There is one best way to organize for production, and that can be found through the systematic scientific inquiry. 3. Production is maximized through specialization and the division of labor. And 4. People and organizations act in accordance with rational economic principles. The development of a theory should be understood in the context of the socio-cultural environment in which it developed. The classical school was a product of the Industrial Revolution, a time we would consider harsh by modern standards. Industrial goods, machinery used to manufacture things, were expensive and profitability often stemmed from keeping the equipment in use and their costs low. So organizational structures were designed to keep the machinery busy, and the organization themselves should work like machines. Accordingly, the first theories that were posed were concerned about the structure of the organization. Arnold Toynbee, a historian, identified Adam Smith and James Watt as the two people who were most responsible for the industrial age. James Watt, of course, invented the steam engine. Smith is credited with beginning the study of economics, and his most famous book, An Inquiry into the Nature and Causes of the Wealth of Nations, devotes its first chapter to the division of labor, specifically how best to organize labor in a pin factory. Adam Smith entered the University of Glasgow when he was 14 and studied moral philosophy under Francis Hutcheson. Smith published a number of books throughout his lifetime. His first was The Theory of Moral Sentiments, written in 1759, and it provided the ethical, philosophical, psychological, and methodological basis of later works. He is most well known for his Wealth of Nations text, in which he says, and I quote, "The greatest improvement in the productive powers of labor, and the greatest part of the skill, dexterity, and judgment with which it is anywhere directed or applied, seem to have been the effects of the division of labor." He continues, quote, "This great increase in quantities of work, which in consequence of the division of labor, the same number of people are capable of performing, is owing to three different circumstances. First, the increase in dexterity of every particular workman. Secondly, to the saving of time, which is commonly lost in the passing one species of work to another. And lastly, to the invention of a great number of machines which facilitate and abridge labor, and enable one man to do the work of many." Other famous names from the school are Henry Town, Henri Fayol, Frederick Taylor, and Max Weber. Henry Town was an engineer who saw management as a new social role and felt the development of management techniques was important for the engineering profession. He attended Yale University for 1 year and was the co-founder of the Yale Lock Company. He laid out ideas for the role of the manager in an article published in 1886 titled "The Engineer as Economist," which addressed how to improve shop performance and worker efficiency. His principal contribution to management science was that as president of the American Society of Mechanical Engineers. And in this, he called for the formation of a society to study management as a separate discipline, to be a subset of Mechanical Engineers Group, and to specialize in shop management and shop accounting. But the idea was that management itself was going to be a specialty. Henri Fayol studied mining at the École Nationale Supérieure des Mines in Saint-Étienne. At the age of 19, he began working for a mining company and became its director in 1888, a position he held for the next 30 years. By 1900, the company was one of the largest producers of iron and steel in France. In 1916, he published a book titled Administration Industrielle et Générale, in which he outlined a general theory of management. He proposed that management consisted of 5 functions: planning, organizing, commanding, coordinating, and controlling. Many of today's management texts, including the one by Daft, which we are using in this course, have reduced the 5 functions to 4: planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. But it has shown that Fayol's work stood the test of time. The one that was left off the list, coordinating, was integrated into leading and controlling. Now, Frederick Winslow Taylor, like Town, was a mechanical engineer whose primary topic was industrial efficiency. He is regarded as the father of scientific management and was one of the first management consultants. On October 19, 1906, Taylor was awarded an honorary Doctor of Science degree by the University of Pennsylvania and eventually became a professor at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. Taylor believed that management could be formulated as an academic discipline, and that the best results would come from the partnership between a trained and qualified management and a cooperative and innovative workforce. His concept of scientific management consisted of 4 principles. 1. Replace rule-of-thumb work methods with methods based on the scientific study of tasks. 2. Scientifically select, train, and develop each employee rather than passively leaving them to train themselves. 3. Provide detailed instruction and supervision of each worker in the performance of that worker's discrete tasks. And 4. Divide the work nearly equally between managers and workers, so that managers apply scientific management principles to planning the work. The last author we include in this list is Maximilian Karl Emil Weber, a German lawyer, politician, scholar, political economist, and sociologist, who also profoundly influenced sociological theory. He earned his doctorate in law by writing a dissertation titled The History of Medieval Business Organizations, and his most famous work is a book titled The Protestant Ethic in the Spirit of Capitalism, which began his work in the sociology of religion. The book examines the effects of Calvinist beliefs on the beginnings of capitalism. He contended that capitalism is not purely materialistic, as Karl Marx had argued, but that it originates in religious and cultural ideas. He is most well known for his Weber thesis, which recognizes several diverse aspects of social authority that he respectively categorized as charismatic, traditional, and legal forms. We'll see this again later on. His argument was that the management of the office follows general rules, which are more or less stable, more or less exhaustive, and which can be learned. Towards the end of the time that the classical school had reached the height of its popularity, according to business historian David Wren, quote, the development of the body of knowledge about how to manage had evolved within a framework of economic, social, and political facets of various cultures. Management was both a process and a product of its cultural environment. The concepts that we covered here may seem simple and axiomatic, which is more a testament to how deeply ingrained they have become than an assessment of them as fundamental or simplistic. These were pioneering ideas at the time, and their influence on management thought has been enduring. In the next session, we are going to consider neoclassical organizational theory and human resource theory.